And the next thing I know, I am looking down at my body and I'm up in the ceiling. And the very first thought I had is, what am I doing up here? And I'm looking down at myself and I'm looking at the scene and I went, oh my God, am I dead? And with that knowing, it's like I had this shift in awareness because it felt like I could think, but it was a different type of thought. It was a different type of thought process. And as I had this awareness of the fact that I'm in the ceiling, at the same time, I realized, wait a minute, I said, I'm up here. I didn't say I'm down there. Like, why am I down there? I said, why am I up here? Meaning what I identified with was whatever this part of me was that was up in the ceiling. It wasn't the me that was down in a chair looking down in my physical body. And I had this epiphany. It was like a lock and a key. And I just went, wow, we aren't our bodies. And with that, I flipped upside down and I'm like inches away from the ceiling. And I recall to this day that I saw all the texture of the ceiling like it was under a microscope. It was so detailed, all the little dents and grooves of the ceiling texture, because it was so close to me. And then like a lens that closes over a camera, it kind of felt like, I like to say I blinked, although I didn't have, physical eyes, and I was gone. I left the room. And when I opened my eyes or the lens was removed, it was this indescribable connection. It was this bliss, this oneness, this feeling of completion. But what's so interesting about it is that this feeling of completion is, I could only describe it because I can refer back to it now from the physical experience. While I was there, it was like there was nothing else but to be that way. There was nothing that was lacking. And so in this place, I call it the void because there wasn't anything there. It was emptiness. And while that sounds like it could be kind of a bit intimidating or it could be scary, the feeling was anything but that. It was a feeling of comfort and serenity and peace, and unlike anything that you can experience in this physical body. And I like to think about it now as like this rich, buttery, comforting blanket. And even though it was like a void, it was a void of anything that wasn't complete. So it was like everything that was there was absolutely complete. And I had this growing awareness that I knew everything there was to ever know in the whole universe. And what was interesting was in this place, there was no time. So everything was happening in my awareness at the same time. It wasn't, we can talk about it and I can talk about it linearly, like this happened and then this happened. But in the experience, it was all happening to me at the same time. And as I was becoming aware of this knowingness, I realized that everything there was to ever know in the entire universe was available. And now I think about this in such a way where if I were to try to describe it, it would be as if you could download the entire internet that had ever existed from the beginning into the end of time and just have it in your knowing and your awareness, and you can access it instantly. And as I started to connect to this, it was like I had started to develop like a 360 vision. And I was seeing through the eyes of every single living thing in every single moment from the beginning of time through eternity. And I say beginning of time like in the figure of speech because there was just no time in this place. And so I could see through every single point of time, every single experience, every single what I call a soul, because I don't have another word for it, but every single living entity. And it was a part of me and I was a part of it. And so there's this oneness that is available, or that I experienced, that it's not like we get to experience here. You know, we connect with friends and family and we feel like we have these really close relationships, and we might meet people that feel really, really familiar to us. And we get this sense of like we've known them before because we almost feel like we're a part of them. That is so, that's like the light version of what this experience was, because it was as if there was no difference between me and you. There's no difference between me and my pets, or the plants, or the planets, or the solar systems, or the entire universe, or all universes. And our understanding of what is beyond the physical compared to what I connected to is we haven't even scratched the surface. We just haven't even come close. And what I felt was, in this all-knowingness, was that there were no questions. As much as I felt like I was, trying to figure out and get answers to everything I had ever wondered in some way, shape, or form in the physical body, I couldn't ask a question. I could only be curious about something. And by being curious about it, I could shift my awareness to the experience, or to the understanding that would give me the answer to that curiosity. Now, it's important to kind of like distinguish between what happens there and what happens here in the physical, because in the physical body, we have to process thought. So it takes time for us to learn something. It takes time for us to understand. But there, it was all knowing, and it was instantaneous. There wasn't any thought process involved. There wasn't any weighing options. There wasn't reflecting on something based off of our own background or the possibilities of the future. It was just pure, simple knowing. And in this place, I understood in a way that I can't explain from a physical perspective, but at this knowing, this pure soul level, that there is no good or bad, that there is no right or wrong. And as I say, there are no lessons to learn, that everything that our soul, or this other part of us, is really aiming for is to experience. And particularly in the physical life, is to experience physical experiences through the physical body. Now, I can compare this physical life to that experience, but when I reflect on this, what I find very interesting is, if I were to try to reflect on the physical experiences, so the pains, the trauma, even some of the memories, I would have a hard time explaining it in that place to somebody. Like if I were to sit down with another soul in the void and say, this is what my physical life that I just came from was like, it would be really very difficult from my experience to do that, because it wasn't available. What was available, though, were all of the feelings, every feeling that I had ever had. And it felt like every feeling that everybody had ever had was what was experienced in the oneness. And although there's a lot of pain and trauma that we can experience here in the physical, what's available to us through this void, or this oneness that I connected to, the love is so unbelievable and so complete that any trauma or any pain that we may experience, or that I experienced in the physical life, just wasn't accessible there. It was like it I don't want to say it didn't exist, because I feel like that invalidates us and our experience here, but it feels like I didn't carry that trauma or that pain into that experience. And as my awareness was growing, I felt like it was accelerating. And so as I became aware of one thing and understood it in my own consciousness, or in my own soul, it lent me to be curious about more and more and more. And so it was like this rapid fire curiosity that just kept bringing more and more into my awareness. Now, at this point, I could not tell you if I was gone for a second or if I was gone for 30 minutes. honestly. It's impossible for me to say because there wasn't time. But in that place, it felt like infinity. It felt like there was no end to who I was as part of this oneness. And there was no end to the oneness. Like the oneness continuously expanded endlessly. And all of us are a part of it, that part of us, that soul level. It felt like we all have that connection and we can all be connected to that. Definitely, it feels like when we pass over, and connected to that through the part of us that's inside of our physical bodies now.